Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Sky. I'm very glad you're here, arriving in this quiet place where nothing needs to be rushed. Maybe the day asked for more attention than you wanted to give. Maybe your mind has been carrying small weights, one after another, without noticing the strain. Or maybe it is simply night now, and night has its own gentle gravity, drawing everything toward a slower pace. Tonight, we'll wander through the most relaxing facts about life on Earth, not as a lesson to learn and not as a list to remember. We'll move like a calm tide, steady and unhurried, through the ways living things begin, adapt, breathe, and rest beneath one shared sky. You don't have to hold on to any detail. You don't have to follow perfectly. If a thought drifts in, it can drift back out again, like mist easing across a quiet field. Take a slow breath and let it be enough. Let your shoulders soften a little. Let your jaw loosen. Let your attention settle where it wants to settle, without forcing it to behave. This is a gentle story, and it will carry itself. Life on Earth began quietly, and that quiet beginning is one of its truest signatures. A soft scientific truth can rest near the start of our journey, simple and steady. The earliest life we know of likely emerged in water, where molecules could meet, mix, and linger long enough for patterns to form. Water gave those patterns patience. Water gave them room. In the beginning, there was no hurry. Only chemistry repeating itself until repetition became something like memory. If you imagine those earliest oceans, you don't have to imagine drama. Think instead of shallow green-blue water, warmed by a young sun that rose and set without anyone to name it. Think of dark stone below, rough and mineral-rich, and the faint shimmer of dissolved elements moving in slow currents. There may have been gentle gradients of heat, warm in one place, cooler in another, and in those gradients, molecules found reasons to gather. Gathering is what matter does when the conditions are kind. Not kind in an emotional way, but kind in a physical way, stable enough for bonds to form, stable enough for structures to hold together long enough to become more than a moment. In the language of biology, life depends on homeostasis, on balance, on a steadiness that protects delicate reactions from sudden change. And even here, at the very start, steadiness was the quiet cradle. In some corners of the early Earth, minerals offered surfaces where chemistry could arrange itself, like tiny beads lining up along a thread. In other places, energy arrived softly, in the form of sunlight, or gentle heat from within the planet. Nothing needed to explode into being, it only needed to continue, a low hum of reaction, a slow folding of molecules, a patient persistence, and if the mind tries to lean forward, trying to grasp a clear picture, it can soften back again. You don't need a sharp image. A soft one is enough, a dim, watery glow, a faint mineral scent you can almost imagine, a cool texture of stone beneath the endless moving surface. The world was learning a rhythm, and rhythm begins with repetition. Somewhere in that repetition, a boundary formed, a quiet line between inside and outside. This is another gentle fact, simple but profound. Cells are not just bags of chemicals. They are careful containers, held together by membranes that separate one environment from another. A membrane is a kind of promise. It says here is a space where reactions can continue, protected from the wider sea. It says here is an inside that can be tended. The first cells were small, and they did not need to be complicated to be alive. They only needed a few abilities, each one quiet and practical. They needed to maintain their boundary. They needed to gather energy. They needed to make copies of what worked, and they needed to change slowly when change helped them continue. Change, at the beginning, was not a dramatic leap. It was a drift, a slight difference in a copied molecule, a small variation in how energy moved through a reaction. A barely noticeable adjustment that made one tiny system persist a little longer than another. Over time, those small differences became the long story of evolution, written not with urgency, but with patient accumulation. It can be soothing to remember that life is not built on speed. Life is built on what can last. What can last is what can maintain balance, what can repair, what can rest, what can respond without breaking. Even now, in every living body, the ancient preference for steadiness remains. It is written into the slow intelligence of cells, into the way tissues mend, into the way the body lowers its pace when night arrives. Let that thought settle in its own way. The body knows how to lower its pace. It has practiced for a very long time, and it does not need constant instruction. A quiet comfort can sit beside you now, like a warm blanket of air. There is nothing required of you in this moment. The earliest life, once it existed, began to do what life always does. It began to interact with its surroundings, not by thinking and not by choosing, but by following the gentle logic of chemistry. Nutrients drifted in, waste drifted out, energy moved through simple pathways. The cell was a small island of order in a wide sea of randomness, and it kept its order by staying steady, not by pushing hard. Steady, not forceful. That is one of the most calming truths in biology. Living systems do not usually thrive by constant intensity. They thrive by regulation. They thrive by timing. They thrive by knowing when to act and when to pause. You can see that in animals that conserve energy, and you can see it in plants that close their pores at night, and you can see it in microbes that slow their metabolism when conditions grow harsh. Even the earlier cells likely had a version of this wisdom, though it wasn't wisdom in the human sense. It was simply what worked. When resources were scarce, a cell that slowed down could survive longer. When conditions were stable, a cell that maintained its internal balance could keep going. This is why, even today, many cells conserve energy by reducing activity when they can. Efficiency is not a sharp command. It is a soft preference, a gentle way of lasting. And as the night deepens, it can be comforting to let your mind adopt the same preference. Not effort, not intensity, only a slow settling. Slow settling can feel like a physical thing, like sand sinking through water, like a feather easing down through still air, like warmth spreading, soft and silent across the surface of the skin. If thoughts are moving quickly, they can move quickly without you chasing them. If they slow, they slow. If they drift, they drift. All of it is allowed. In the early oceans, long before forests and wings and fur, life began to shape the planet in ways that were gradual and quiet. Some microbes learned to harvest sunlight, and that simple act began a slow transformation of Earth's atmosphere. Photosynthesis, in its most basic form, is a calm exchange. Light arrives, energy is stored, carbon is rearranged, oxygen is released. No rush, only repetition. Over a vast span of time, oxygen accumulated, and the world changed, but it changed like dawn changes the sky, almost unnoticed until it is already there. It can be soothing to think of oxygen as a gift that arrived slowly. To think of the air as a shared creation shaped by countless tiny lives doing small, steady work. The atmosphere is not separate from life. It is partly made by life, held in balance by life, adjusted and maintained by living systems that respond to change with quiet persistence. A faint sound can be imagined here, like the soft hush of waves against stone, steady and low. The colour of the scene is muted and calm, green-blue water under a pale sky. The texture is smooth, like cool glass, like damp sand under gentle pressure. These details don't demand attention. They only offer it, like a small lantern on a quiet path. And as the path continues, we can follow life forward, not by leaping across time, but by letting time unfold as it naturally does. Life did not begin as complex creatures. It began as simple systems that learned to continue, and then, over time, those systems learned to cooperate. Cooperation is another soft miracle of life, one that rarely needs noise. Cells began to share tasks. Some specialized in gathering energy, some focused on protection, some became better at sensing the environment. When cells worked together, they could become larger than one cell alone. They could become more stable. They could buffer change the way water buffers temperature. They could create an internal world where conditions remained gentle. Gentle conditions allowed delicate processes to happen. That is a quiet theme you can return to again and again. Life's most intricate work does not occur in chaos. It occurs in protected spaces, in stable climates, in carefully regulated internal environments. In your own body, right now. This is still true. Your cells are constantly maintaining the conditions they need. They are balancing salts and water. They are managing energy. They are repairing small wear. They do this without asking for your attention, and they do it best when the body's allowed to rest. Let that be a comforting thought, not a task. The work of life continues, even as you let go. If you need a moment to feel grounded, it's here for you. The room around you can fade a little, and the idea of Earth can hold you gently. Earth itself is a resting place for life, a planet with temperatures that often stay within a range that water can remain liquid. That fact is simple, but it is deeply soothing. Liquid water is a kind of gentle permission. It allows chemistry to move at a workable pace. It allows nutrients to dissolve and travel. It allows heat to spread softly. It allows life to exist not as a brittle structure, but as a flexible one. And Earth is not only water, it is rock and air and light, all arranged in a way that tends toward patterns. The planet has cycles that smooth the sharp edges of change, day and night, seasons, the slow circulation of water through clouds and rivers and underground streams, the recycling of elements through soil and living bodies. These cycles are not loud, they are steady. They are slow and sure. Slow and sure can be a phrase the mind returns to. Slow and sure, like the turning of the planet itself. Slow and sure, like breath moving in and out. Slow and sure, like the quiet work of cells repairing in the dark. As life expanded, it did not erase the quiet of its beginnings. It carried that quiet forward, like a memory held in the structure of every cell. Even in the busiest ecosystems, the foundation is still small and steady processes, repeated so many times that they become the background hum of the world. You can sense that hum if you imagine it, not as a sound you must hear, but as a feeling. A low, steady rhythm beneath everything. The world is always doing its quiet work, and you are part of that world, not by effort, but by belonging. Belonging does not require performance. It does not require achievement. It is simply a fact, like gravity, like nightfall, like the presence of water in the body. You're made of the same elements that cycle through oceans and soil and air. You carry ancient chemistry in your blood and bones. You carry the planet's history in the calm intelligence of your cells. This is not meant to feel dramatic. It is meant to feel steady, like a warm stone held in the palm, like the soft weight of a blanket, like the slow dimming of light beyond a window, and then a quieter pace, a gentler breath, a little less thinking. Life's beginning, when viewed this way, is not a single moment. It is a gradual unfolding, a slow learning of what can last. It is molecules finding patterns. It is cells finding boundaries. It is systems finding balance. It is cooperation emerging as a way to become more stable, more protected, more able to rest and repair. And beginnings do not stop once life exists. Beginnings continue in small ways all the time. Every time a cell divides, a beginning happens. Every time tissue heals, a beginning happens. Every time a seed opens and sends a root into soil, a beginning happens. Every time you inhale, you begin again. Not loudly, not urgently, but quietly. Quietly is how life prefers to return to itself. Quietly is how the world makes room for what comes next. If the mind wants to wander, it can wander, and if it wants to settle, it can settle. The story will keep a steady pace either way. The tone can remain warm and low, like a lamp turned down, like a voice softened by night. In the next part of our journey, we'll drift closer to the living interior of the present moment, to the small worlds inside every body, where proteins fold with care, where membranes pulse gently, where energy is released in measured steps. But for now, we can linger at the edge of the beginning, feeling how life learned to last by choosing steadiness over strain. The ocean hush remains. The green-blue water glows faintly. The minerals rest beneath. Time stretches wide, soft and endless, holding everything with patient hands. And as beginnings fade into continuity, we drift onward into the long memory life carries within itself, slow and steady, into calm. The world softens, the breath slows. In patience, life learns how to last. Deep within every living thing, far beyond what the eyes can see, life moves at a pace that rarely hurries. This is one of the most calming truths biology has to offer. Inside leaves and lungs, beneath skin and bark, within creatures that swim and crawl and rest, countless tiny systems are at work, and almost all of them prefer to move slowly. Cells are not rushed places. They are patient environments shaped by balance rather than urgency. A simple scientific fact can settle gently at the beginning of this thought. Most cellular processes are deliberately gradual, unfolding in steps that protect delicate structures from strain. Proteins fold not all at once but carefully, guided by their shape and surroundings. Membranes pulse with small movements, expanding and relaxing as substances pass through. Energy is released in measured stages, never all at once, never wasted. If you imagine drifting inward now, past skin and tissue and bone, you can picture the interior of a single cell as a soft glowing space. Colours are muted and warm. Faint gradients of blue and amber fade into one another. There is no sharp edge, only boundaries that curve and flex. A gentle electrical whisper hums through the space, not loud enough to hear, but steady enough to feel. The rhythm here feels almost like breathing. Not the kind of breathing that fills the chest, but a subtler rise and fall. A slow exchange that keeps everything in balance. Inside the cell, molecules move by drifting and bumping, guided by concentration rather than command. Nothing shouts instructions, nothing demands speed. One quiet microfact can rest here, simple and reassuring. Cells conserve energy by slowing down whenever possible. When resources are limited, they reduce activity. When repair is needed, they pause other tasks to focus inward. This tendency toward conservation is not a weakness, it is a strength. It allows life to persist across changing conditions, across night and day, across seasons that offer abundance and scarcity in turn. Let that idea settle for a moment. Conservation as care, slowness as intelligence. If attention begins to soften, that is welcome here. Inside the cell, long strands of DNA rest coiled and protected, like threads stored carefully away. They are not constantly active, they wait. They open only when needed, when the right signals arrive, when conditions feel safe enough for the work of copying or repair. This waiting is not emptiness. It is readiness without tension. Mitochondria, often called the power centers of the cell, hum quietly as they convert nutrients into usable energy. They do not burn fuel in a sudden blaze. They guide electrons along gentle pathways, releasing energy in small portions that the cell can handle. It is a controlled warmth, like embers rather than flames, slow and steady rather than fast and fierce. And as mitochondria hum, membranes continue their soft pulsing. These membranes are selective, letting some substances pass while holding others back. This selectivity is another form of calm intelligence. The cell does not open itself completely to the world. It maintains an internal environment where reactions can proceed smoothly. It protects itself, not by rigidity, but by responsive flexibility. The internal fluid of the cell, called cytoplasm, is not empty space. It is crowded with structures and molecules, yet it remains fluid, allowing movement without chaos. The texture, if you imagine it, is like thick honey or warm gel, slow-moving and kind. Things drift rather than collide. Reactions occur in proximity, guided by gentle attraction rather than force. And if the mind wanders here, drifting like a molecule itself, that wandering is part of the rhythm. There is no need to hold a fixed image. A sense of softness is enough. The slow intelligence of cells mirrors something deeply familiar. Just as cells lower their pace during repair, the body invites a similar descent as night arrives. When darkness deepens, hormones shift. Signals travel through the nervous system, encouraging muscles to release tension, encouraging the mind to let go of sharp focus. Thoughts begin to space themselves out. Sensations soften at the edges. This is not something you have to make happen. It is something the body remembers how to do. Like cells, the body prefers efficiency over excess. It prefers rhythms that can be sustained without strain. If you notice the weight of your body now, resting where it is, that weight can be allowed. The surface beneath you holds you without effort. You do not have to hold yourself up. A quiet reassurance can settle here, like a hand resting gently on the shoulder. Everything essential is already being handled. Within cells, communication happens through chemical signals, small molecules released and received, carrying information without sound. These signals bind briefly, deliver their message, and then drift away. There is no clinging, there's no need to shout. The message arrives, is understood, and dissolves. This pattern repeats across tissues and organs. Messages arrive, responses follow, balance is restored. The system returns to baseline, over and over, in cycles that feel almost musical in their repetition. Even when cells are under stress, their first response is often to slow down. They activate pathways that reduce energy use, that pause growth, that focus on repair. This response protects the whole organism. It is an ancient strategy, refined over billions of years, and it remains deeply effective. You can sense how this applies beyond biology, without needing to think it through. Slowing down protects delicate systems, rest allows repair, quiet creates space for balance to return. A faint sensory detail can drift in now. Imagine a low, steady hum, barely audible, like distant wind moving through walls. The colour is dim and even, a soft grey-blue. The texture is smooth and yielding, like warm clay. These impressions do not demand attention. They simply accompany the rhythm. And as the hum continues, you may notice how the language of cells feels less like machinery and more like listening. Cells listen to their environment. They listen to chemical cues. They listen to temperature and pressure. They respond, not with urgency, but with adjustment. This responsiveness is the heart of biological intelligence, not speed, not dominance. Just the ability to sense change and meet it gently. Trust is built into this system. Cells trust the environment enough to open channels when nutrients are present. They trust internal signals enough to pause division when damage is detected. They trust the rhythm of the organism enough to rest when rest is needed. And that trust extends upward, through tissues, through organs, through entire bodies. Life continues its work whether it is observed or not, whether it is named or not, whether it is remembered or not. You do not have to watch it. You do not have to manage it. Another soft reassurance can arrive here, like a quiet nod. It's all right to let the process unfold on its own. As we drift deeper into this inner world, it becomes clear that complexity does not require tension. A cell is one of the most complex systems known, yet it operates best when its internal environment remains calm and regulated. Complexity thrives on stability, not chaos. The same is true for larger systems. Organs rely on steady blood flow. Brains rely on balanced chemistry. Ecosystems rely on predictable cycles, and all of them rely on periods of rest to maintain their function. Rest, then, is not an interruption of life. It is a core feature of it. Cells repair DNA during rest. They clear waste. They reorganize internal structures. They prepare for what comes next, without anticipation, without anxiety. If the mind feels lighter now, less inclined to chase each thought, that lightness mirrors what is happening on a cellular level. Activity lowers, background processes take over, the system shifts into maintenance mode, quiet and effective. You can let that parallel exist without effort. You don't need to connect it consciously. It connects itself. Inside cells, time is measured differently. Reactions take milliseconds or minutes, but the overall rhythm stretches across hours and days. Cells divide slowly. Tissues renew gradually. Healing unfolds in stages, often unnoticed until it is already underway. This long view is another calming gift of biology. Life is patient with itself. It does not expect instant results. It allows processes to complete in their own time. And as the night deepens, patience becomes easier to feel. The world outside grows quieter, sounds soften, light dims. The external pace slows, inviting the internal pace to follow. A final gentle reassurance can rest here, like a deep exhale. There is time, there is room, there is no rush. As this chapter settles, the image of the cell remains glowing softly, its boundaries intact, its interior balanced. It continues its work, not because it is forced to, but because it knows how. It has always known how. The rhythm within cells expands outward, slow and steady, into tissues, into bodies, into the larger patterns of living things that learn when to move and when to pause. That same rhythm is already present everywhere life exists, waiting to be felt rather than managed. And from this calm within cells, the same rhythm expands outward, slow and steady, into entire bodies, into rest, into stillness. The hum fades, the light softens, what lasts is what moves gently. All living bodies, from the smallest insect resting on a leaf to the largest whale drifting through dark water, share a quiet pattern that shapes their days and nights. Movement is followed by stillness. Effort gives way to ease. Activity slowly folds into rest. This pattern is not learned in a single lifetime. It is carried, refined, and remembered across generations, written into nerves and muscles, into hormones and heat, into the very structure of flesh. A gentle scientific truth can arrive here without weight. Biology calls this balance homeostasis, the ability of a body to keep its internal world steady even as the outer world changes. It is not more than a command. When energy is spent, it is later restored. When heat rises, it is released. When night comes, the body listens. You can imagine drifting across Earth now, not quickly, but slowly enough to notice how many creatures are already resting. Somewhere, a reptile lies warmed by the last memory of sun, its muscles loose, its breath shallow and even. Somewhere else, a bird tucks its head beneath soft feathers, eyelids sliding closed as heart rate eases downward. Far below the surface of the ocean, mammals glide through dark water, their movements economical, their bodies conserving warmth and oxygen with practiced calm. This slowing is not a failure to act, it is a shift in priority. One simple fact anchors this understanding. Rest is not the absence of function, it is a change in function. When a body rests, it redirects energy toward maintenance, repair, and balance. Muscles soften so blood can flow freely. Digestion steadies. Neural activity reorganizes itself, smoothing sharp edges of thought. As this idea settles, images can remain soft and impressionistic. Warm fur against cool night air, smooth scales holding the day's last heat, dim light filtering through leaves, a faint hum of breath, steady and unremarkable. These details do not compete for attention, they simply exist, like the background of a calm dream. Every body has signals that guide it toward rest. As light fades, chemical messengers shift. In many animals, melatonin begins to rise, gently lowering alertness. Core temperature drops by a small but meaningful amount. Muscles receive cues to release tension. Even posture changes, inviting the spine to settle, inviting the limbs to fold closer to the body. These changes happen whether they are noticed or not. Bodies are not waiting for permission to rest. They are designed for it. If your own awareness drifts to the shape of your body now, you might notice how it's already finding positions that require less effort. Gravity is being shared with the surface beneath you. Weight spreads out instead of concentrating. Breath becomes less ambitious. All of this is part of the same ancient pattern. A quiet reassurance can be felt here, like a low light left on in the distance. Nothing is wrong with slowing down. Across species, rest takes many forms, each suited to a particular way of living. Some animals enter deep sleep, muscles nearly still, awareness turned inward. Others remain lightly aware, resting one half of the brain at a time, especially those that must surface to breathe or remain alert to predators. Even here, balance is key, awareness is lowered, not erased. Insects pause between bursts of activity, their metabolic rate dropping as they cling to stems or shelter beneath leaves. Fish reduce movement, hovering in place with minimal fin motion. Large herbivores lie down in open spaces, trusting the collective vigilance of the group to keep them safe. No creature rests entirely alone. There is always context, there is always environment. Belonging emerges as a quiet emotional thread, woven through biology itself. Bodies rest more easily when they are supported by surroundings that feel stable: a burrow, a nest, a herd, a reef. Even solitary animals choose resting places with care, selecting shelter, warmth, or camouflage. That careful selection is another soft intelligence. It reflects an understanding carried in instinct rather than thought, that rest requires safety, and safety does not have to be absolute. It only needs to be sufficient. Let that idea exist gently. Sufficient is enough. As the chapter drifts onward, the pace continues to descend. Sentences lengthen, pauses widen. The mind does not need to hold every detail. It can float between them like a leaf on slow water. Within resting bodies, repair work quietly begins. Muscle fibers mend small tears. Immune cells patrol calmly, clearing debris. The brain replays patterns of the day, not to judge them, but to integrate them. Learning settles, emotion smooths out. These processes are subtle. They do not announce themselves. Often, they are only noticed when rest has been lacking, when balance has been disrupted. But when rest is allowed, they proceed with quiet efficiency. Another reassurance can arrive here, soft and unintrusive. You do not need to supervise this. The land itself seems to respond to resting bodies. Soil cools as heat dissipates. Plants release moisture into the night air. Sounds thin out, leaving more space between them. Even wind changes character after sunset, often slowing, flowing closer to the ground. Imagine a wide landscape under dim light. Hills soften, edges blur. Movement becomes rare enough to notice when it happens. A single animal shifts position. A branch creaks. A distant call fades quickly back into silence. Silence here is not empty. It is full of processes moving slowly enough to be felt rather than heard. In this environment, bodies do not withdraw from life. They participate in it differently. Rest is a way of staying connected, of remaining in rhythm with the larger cycles that shape the planet. Day gives way to night. Activity gives way to stillness. Stillness gives way to renewal. The idea that rest is participation, not absence, can settle deeply. It reframes stillness as an active state, rich with purpose even when nothing seems to be happening. As the mind absorbs this, there is less need to label sensations. Warmth can simply be warmth. Heaviness can simply be heaviness. Thoughts can pass through without forming stories. The body knows what to do with rest, just as cells do, just as ecosystems do. A soft sensory cue can appear now, barely there. The colour of the scene deepens into dark blues and gentle browns. The air feels cooler, smoother. The texture of the ground, imagined or real, feels steady and supportive. Another gentle reassurance drifts through, like a quiet reminder. You are allowed to pause. Across Earth, the majority of living beings are resting at any given moment. This is not a coincidence. It is a necessity. Without rest, systems fray. Without cycles of pause, balance cannot be maintained. Life depends on these intervals of low activity, just as much as it depends on moments of action. Even predators, Symbols of movement and alertness spend far more time resting than hunting. Their strength is preserved through stillness. Their success depends on patience. Patience again emerges as a recurring theme. Not forced patience, but natural patience, the kind that arises when there is no need to hurry. As this chapter nears its quiet centre, the sense of belonging deepens. Every resting body is part of a larger pattern, a shared agreement between life and environment. No creature has to invent rest. It is offered by the turning of the planet, by the dimming of light, by the cooling of air. You may feel that offer now in a subtle way. The night does not demand sleep. It simply makes it easier. Another soft reassurance settles, like a final exhale. Everything is allowed to slow. As the last images drift by, rest is no longer framed as something separate from life. It is woven into life, inseparable from movement, inseparable from growth. Bodies that learn to rest are bodies that endure. The reptile remains warm and still. The bird breathes evenly beneath feathers. The whale drifts, conserving energy in dark water. The land holds them all without effort. And as bodies settle, the land beneath them also begins to slow, carrying that same rhythm outward, into soil, into roots, into quiet. The hum fades further, the pace lowers. To rest is to remain part of the whole. Plants appear still at first glance, rooted and silent, yet their lives are shaped by motion that unfolds on a gentler clock. Not the quick movement of muscle or wing, but the slow adjustment of cells responding to light, water, and gravity. This is movement measured in hours and seasons rather than seconds, and it carries a calm intelligence of its own. A soft scientific truth can settle near the beginning. Plants lower their metabolic activity at night, conserving energy when light is absent. As darkness spreads, leaves relax their posture. Tiny pores along their surfaces close part way, reducing water loss. Growth pauses, not because it has failed, but because timing matters. Rest here too is a form of wisdom. If you imagine standing at the edge of a forest as evening deepens, the change is subtle but real. The green of leaves darkens into deeper tones, shadows stretch and blend together. The air feels heavier with moisture, cooler against the skin. A faint earthy scent rises from soil that has absorbed warmth all day and now begins to release it. Roots continue their work beneath the surface, exploring slowly through cool soil. They are not idle. They sense moisture, follow gradients of nutrients, and form quiet partnerships with fungi that extend their reach. These underground networks are vast and delicate, spreading like threads through the dark, exchanging resources in a calm, continuous flow. This hidden cooperation is one of the most peaceful facts in ecology. Many plants rely on mycorrhizal fungi to gather minerals from the soil. In return, the fungi receive sugars produced through photosynthesis. Neither partner rushes. The exchange unfolds steadily, sustaining both over time. Let that image soften in the mind. A dark, cool underground space. Fine threads glistening faintly with moisture. The texture of soil firm yet yielding. Above, trunks stand quietly, leaves barely stirring. Nothing strains, nothing demands attention. A gentle reassurance can rest here, like a quiet echo. Everything is unfolding as it should. During daylight, plants perform one of the most important chemical processes on Earth. Through photosynthesis, they use light to rearrange molecules, storing energy and releasing oxygen. This process is not loud or dramatic. It happens cell by cell, leaf by leaf, guided by pigments that absorb light in specific wavelengths. Chlorophyll captures energy gently, passing it along pathways refined by time. When night arrives, this work pauses, not ends but rests. The plant shifts focus, conserving what it has gathered. Sugars produced during the day are redistributed, supporting growth and repair. The internal balance changes, adapting to the absence of light. Nighttime in a garden or forest has a distinct quality. Sounds soften, colours recede, the faint rustle of leaves becomes less frequent. The air cools further, settling close to the ground. Even insects move differently, their rhythms adjusted to the dark. Plants respond to these changes without awareness, yet with precision. Some flowers close their petals at night, protecting delicate structures. Others release fragrance only after dusk, timed to the activity of nocturnal pollinators. Each behavior reflects a deep attunement to cycles of light and dark. Attunement is a word that fits well here. Plants do not fight their environment, they tune themselves to it, adjusting growth rates, leaf orientation, and internal chemistry to match external conditions. This tuning creates stability, allowing them to persist through heat and cold, drought and rain. Another reassurance can drift through, barely noticeable. There is no need to hurry. Across fields and forests, plant life shapes the planet in quiet ways. Leaves intercept sunlight, moderating temperature. Roots hold soil in place, preventing erosion. Forests influence rainfall patterns, drawing moisture into the air through transpiration. These effects accumulate slowly, becoming visible only over time. The slow pace of these processes is part of their strength. Sudden change can disrupt balance. Gradual change allows systems to adapt. Plants embody this principle, growing incrementally, responding continuously, never forcing an outcome. Imagine a single tree growing over decades. Each year a thin ring forms beneath the bark, recording conditions of that season. Wider rings in years of abundance, narrower rings in years of scarcity. The tree does not remember these years in a conscious way, yet its body carries the record. Time is written into its structure. Time, again, appears not as a rush forward, but as layering. One quiet season resting upon another. As attention lingers here, humility naturally arises. Plants ask for little: light, water, suitable temperature. In return, they create the foundation for life on land. They produce food, shelter, and oxygen. They stabilize climates and soften landscapes. All of this is done without urgency, without sound. The tone of the chapter continues to lower. Sentences become gentler. Pauses widen. A sensory detail can float in now. The faint sound of leaves brushing together in a light night breeze. The colour of moss glowing softly in low light. The cool, damp texture of the soil beneath bare feet, imagined or remembered. Plants also respond to gravity, a constant guide that tells roots which way to grow and shoots where to reach. This response, called gravitropism, unfolds slowly, cell by cell, as growth hormones redistribute themselves. There is no sudden movement, only a gradual curve toward balance. Light guides plants in similar ways. Even without eyes, they sense direction and intensity. Stems bend toward brightness. Leaves orient themselves to capture optimal exposure. At night, these movements ease, settling into a neutral position, conserving energy until dawn returns. This settling can feel familiar. Like shoulders dropping at the end of the day, like eyes closing without effort, like the body finding a position that requires less holding. Another gentle reassurance can arrive, warm and low. You can let go. Plants teach patience simply by existing. They demonstrate that growth cannot be forced, only supported. They show that rest is not wasted time but preparation. A seed does not sprout the moment it touches soil. It waits for moisture, temperature, and timing to align. That waiting is not empty. It is attentive. As this idea settles, the world feels a little quieter. The mind may notice fewer sharp edges. Thoughts stretch out, slower, less insistent. Across the planet, billions of plants are resting at night. Forests breathe differently. Fields cool. Even algae in water adjust their activity, responding to the absence of light. The collective effect is a subtle shift in the planet's metabolism, a nightly lowering of pace. This nightly lowering creates space for repair, space for balance, space for systems to reset. Another reassurance drifts through, like a distant bell heard through fog. Nothing is being missed. The quiet architecture of plants is not only physical, it is temporal. It is built of rhythms that repeat and layer, creating resilience through consistency. Plants endure storms and droughts not by resisting change, but by adapting slowly, bending rather than breaking. As this chapter nears its resting point, patience becomes the central feeling. Growth that cannot be forced, healing that cannot be rushed, cycles that must be honoured rather than controlled. The forest stands, the garden sleeps, roots continue their gentle exploration. Leaves rest in the dark. The planet breathes out just a little. From this rooted quiet, life begins to move again, carried softly by water, but for now it rests. The air is cool and calm, the ground is steady and kind. Stillness holds everything without effort. Stillness is how growth remembers itself. Water connects every living system on Earth, quietly and completely. Inside cells it cradles delicate reactions. Across landscapes it shapes valleys and soils. Above it drifts through clouds, returning again as rain. Wherever life exists, water is already there, holding space, smoothing change, remembering movement long after it has passed. A gentle scientific fact can arrive without weight. Most life processes occur in water because water buffers change. It absorbs heat slowly. It dissolves nutrients evenly. It allows chemistry to happen without sudden extremes. In this way, water creates stability, and stability allows life to continue. If you imagine water now, there is no need to picture a rushing river or crashing wave. Think instead of stillness, a quiet pond at dusk, morning dew clinging to grass, the fluid interior of the body moving without sound. The sensation is cool and steady, soft and endless. Inside every cell, water forms the background of life. Molecules float and drift within it, meeting by chance, guided by concentration rather than force. Enzymes shape reactions gently, lowering energy barriers so processes can proceed without strain. Even heat is carried away slowly, preventing delicate structures from breaking apart. This is one of water's most comforting roles. It moderates, it smooths, it protects against sharp change. Let that thought settle. Moderation as care. Across the body, water carries nutrients and removes waste. Blood plasma flows quietly through vessels, delivering oxygen and sugars, gathering byproducts to be released later. Lymph moves even more slowly, draining tissues, maintaining balance. Nothing here is rushed. Circulation is constant, but its pace is calm. A faint sound can be imagined now, like a low ripple echoing through a cavern, distant and rhythmic. The colour is muted silver blue, The texture is cool against the skin, soothing rather than cold. Water's cycles mirror rest itself. Evaporation lifts moisture gently into the air. Condensation gathers it back into form. Rain returns it to the surface where it seeps into soil, runs along stone or pools quietly. Nothing is lost. Everything moves, but always with the option to slow. These cycles are not just planetary. They exist within living bodies as well. Water is taken in, water is released. Balance is maintained through constant gentle exchange. The body does not hoard water without reason, and it does not release it without care. Another reassurance can arrive here, soft and unobtrusive. There is room to release what is no longer needed. Emotionally, water offers a sense of easing. Heat carried away, tension diluted, pressure reduced. When systems become overwhelmed, water provides space, spreading energy out so that no single point bears too much. This is true in rivers that flood gently across plains, depositing nutrients without tearing the land apart. It is true in oceans that absorb heat from the atmosphere, moderating climate over long spans of time. It is true in the body, where water helps regulate temperature and cushion organs, absorbing shock. Water does not resist movement. It allows it, but it does not demand speed. As attention drifts outward, landscapes shaped by water appear. Smooth stones worn by years of contact. Valleys carved gradually, not by force, but by persistence. Underground streams moving unseen, patient and sure. These features tell stories written over time, stories of repetition rather than drama. A quiet reassurance can be felt here, like a gentle current supporting you. You do not need to push. Water also carries memory in a physical sense. Oceans retain heat absorbed months or even years earlier. Ice cores preserve records of ancient atmospheres. Groundwater holds traces of rainfall from decades past. Movement leaves marks, and water remembers them without judgment. Even within the body, water reflects history. Hydration levels shift with seasons. Cells adapt to availability. The balance achieved today is shaped by patterns from yesterday. The night deepens around these thoughts, and the pace continues to slow. Sentences soften, pauses lengthen. Imagine a lake at night. The surface is dark and still, reflecting faint points of light. No ripples break the calm. Beneath the surface, life continues, but at a gentler pace. Fish hover. Plants release oxygen stored during the day. Microorganisms adjust their metabolism, responding to cooler temperatures. This stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness held quietly. Another reassurance drifts through, like a breath taken without effort. It's all right to be still. Water's ability to dissolve substances is another subtle gift. It allows nutrients to be transported evenly. It prevents build-up. It keeps concentrations within ranges that life can tolerate. Without this dissolving power, reactions would become too intense, too localized. In this way, water is a constant mediator, always distributing, always smoothing. It ensures that no single moment becomes too much. As the mind rests on this idea, it may notice a sense of spaciousness, like thoughts spreading out instead of crowding together, like sensations softening around the edges. Across Earth, water connects distant places. Rain that falls on mountains eventually reaches the sea. Moisture evaporated from oceans returns to land. Rivers carry minerals from rock to soil, nourishing ecosystems far downstream. Everything is linked by slow movement. This linking creates continuity. A feeling that nothing truly disappears, only changes form. Water moves, rests, moves again. It pauses as ice. It lingers as mist. It settles as dew. These pauses matter. They create balance. They allow systems to reset. Another gentle reassurance can settle here, like a soft echo. There is time for everything. As this chapter approaches its quiet center, the image of water becomes simpler, less movement, less detail, just presence, a broad, calm surface, a deep, dark stillness beneath. The body too contains these quiet waters. Blood slows slightly at rest, breath becomes shallower, internal temperatures shift. The sensation is one of being held from within, held, not constrained, supported, not pressured. The story of water is the story of life's ability to adapt without breaking, to move without rushing, to rest without stopping. It teaches that flow and stillness are not opposites but partners. As the last images fade, water returns to stillness, a lake under stars, a glass of water untouched on a table, the internal ocean of the body settling into equilibrium. From this stillness, the air above begins its own quiet dance, but for now, water rests, holding memory, holding balance. What flows also knows how to be still. Breathing is shared by forests, oceans, and bodies alike, a rhythm so constant that it often fades into the background of awareness. Yet this quiet exchange is one of the most stabilizing processes on Earth, a slow conversation between living systems and the air that surrounds them. Oxygen moves in, carbon moves out, balance is maintained, not by force, but by cooperation unfolding over time. A calm scientific truth can settle gently here. Earth's atmosphere remains stable because living systems regulate it together. No single forest, no single ocean current, no single organism is responsible. Stability emerges from countless small exchanges, each one modest, each one necessary. If you imagine the planet from above, there is no sharp boundary between land and sky. Air drapes itself over mountains and valleys, over oceans and plains, moving slowly, guided by temperature and pressure rather than intention. The movement is soft, continuous, almost invisible. A faint sensory impression can arrive now. A cool night breeze brushing past skin, the low hush of air moving through branches, the colour of the sky deepening into a gentle gradient of blue and grey. Nothing demands attention. Everything simply flows. Forests breathe in their own way. During the day, leaves draw in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, a steady exchange powered by light. At night, this exchange shifts. Oxygen is taken in. Carbon is released. The overall effect remains balanced because of scale and timing. Billions of leaves respond together, smoothing out fluctuations that might otherwise grow sharp. Oceans participate in this breathing as well. Phytoplankton, tiny drifting organisms near the surface, produce a significant portion of the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. They do this quietly, suspended in sunlit water, adjusting their activity with the rise and fall of light. When night comes, their pace slows, metabolism easing back. This slowing is not a loss, it is a reset. Another reassurance can drift in here, light and brief. Everything is moving as it should. Air itself is shaped by temperature differences. Warm air rises, cool air sinks. These movements create gentle currents that circulate around the globe. Over time, these currents distribute heat and moisture, preventing extremes from settling in one place for too long. These processes operate on scales too large to feel directly, yet their effects are intimate. The climate you experience, the weather patterns you know, are shaped by this slow, planetary breathing. It is not steady in every moment, but it is stable over long spans, guided by feedback rather than control. Within bodies, breathing mirrors these broader patterns. Inhale, exhale. Oxygen enters the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide leaves. The exchange is quiet, rhythmic, automatic. You do not have to instruct it. It continues whether attention is present or not. As night deepens, breathing often becomes slower and shallower. This is another gentle fact. The nervous system shifts toward rest, reducing the need for rapid oxygen delivery. Muscles require less energy. The heart eases its pace. The body adjusts like a landscape cooling after sunset. A soft reassurance can settle here, like a hand resting lightly on the chest. There is nothing to manage. Inside the lungs, millions of tiny air sacs expand and contract, their surfaces thin and moist to allow gases to pass through easily. Blood flows close by, carrying oxygen away and returning carbon dioxide to be released. The exchange happens in silence, efficient and calm. This silence is shared across life. Fish extract oxygen dissolved in water as it passes over gills. Insects use networks of tiny tubes to deliver air directly to tissues. Plants exchange gases through small openings in leaves. Different structures, same principle. Exchange without urgency. Emotionally, this shared rhythm invites trust. No single breath sustains the world, yet all of them together do. No single organism maintains the atmosphere, yet collectively life holds the balance. That balance does not depend on perfection. It depends on participation. As attention drifts, imagine the air as a soft blanket, wrapping the planet evenly. It moves around you now, unnoticed, supporting every breath taken by every living thing. It carries sounds gently. It moderates temperature. It provides space. Another reassurance can pass through, barely more than a whisper. You are held by this rhythm. Night air often feels different from day air. Cooler, denser, quieter. Sounds travel differently. Scents linger longer. The atmosphere settles closer to the ground, creating a sense of enclosure. This change signals rest to many organisms, including humans. The body responds without instruction. Alertness lowers, muscles release, thoughts slow. Breathing follows, deepening slightly, spacing itself out. This spacing is important. It prevents accumulation. It allows waste gases to be cleared efficiently. It keeps internal chemistry within gentle bounds. Across ecosystems, respiration links living things together. Animals exhale carbon dioxide that plants later use. Plants release oxygen that animals depend on. Microorganisms fill gaps in between, adjusting flows at smaller scales. The system remains flexible because it is distributed. Distributed systems are resilient systems. They bend rather than break. As this idea settles, the pace of the narration continues to descend. Sentences grow quieter. Pauses lengthen. A subtle sensory cue can appear. The faint sound of wind moving across open ground. The coolness of air entering the nose. The softness of fabric rising and falling with each breath. Breathing, in this wider view, is not effort. It is exchange. It is cooperation between internal and external worlds. It is a reminder that boundaries are permeable, that life depends on openness balanced with protection. Another gentle reassurance drifts in, like a slow exhale. There is nothing you need to add. As the chapter nears its resting point, the image of breathing expands outward again. Forests and oceans continue their quiet work. The atmosphere circulates. The planet maintains its balance through countless small adjustments. Life listens inward once more, responding to cues that signal night, rest, and renewal. The air quiets. Movement softens. The world seems to draw a collective breath, then release it slowly. From this calm exchange, from this shared gentleness, stability emerges. Balance is not imposed. It is grown, breath by breath, leaf by leaf, cell by cell. The currents ease, the rhythm steadies. Balance is built from shared gentleness. Life carries time differently than clocks do. It does not move in straight lines or count forward with numbers. Instead, time in living systems circles, layers, and folds back on itself, guided by rhythms that repeat until they become familiar. This way of keeping time is quieter, softer, and far more forgiving than the ticking measures humans often imagine. A calm scientific truth can settle here, simple and grounding. Most organisms follow internal clocks synchronized to cycles of light and dark. These circadian rhythms are built into cells themselves, guiding when energy is used, when repair begins, and when rest becomes natural. Even without conscious awareness, bodies anticipate night long before it arrives. As evening deepens, light changes quality. It grows bluer, dimmer, less direct. This shift is sensed by specialized receptors in the eyes and skin, which send gentle signals inward. Hormones respond by adjusting their release. Alertness softens. Temperature lowers slightly. The body prepares not by stopping, but by changing pace. You can imagine shadows lengthening now, stretching across the ground in smooth shapes. Colors cool into muted tones. The world feels less defined at the edges, more forgiving. Sounds thin out, leaving more silence between them. A distant call fades. A breeze passes, then rests. Time, in this setting, does not feel like something that presses forward. It feels like something that settles around you. Within cells, circadian rhythms guide cycles of activity and rest. Genes turn on and off in predictable patterns. Proteins rise and fall in concentration. Metabolic pathways shift emphasis depending on the hour. These changes are subtle, but together they create a daily wave of readiness and recovery. This wave repeats day after day, often without interruption. When it is disrupted, systems feel strained. When it is honored, balance returns more easily. Another gentle reassurance can arrive here, quiet and steady. There is a rhythm supporting you. Seasonal rhythms layer themselves on top of daily ones. In many species, changes in daylight length trigger shifts in behavior and physiology. Fur thickens. Migration begins. Reproduction pauses or resumes. Plants alter growth patterns. Seeds wait. Buds form, then remain closed until conditions align. These responses are not rushed. They unfold gradually, guided by thresholds rather than deadlines. A certain number of longer nights, a particular temperature range, a subtle shift in moisture. Once enough signals accumulate, the system responds. Accumulation is a recurring theme in biological time. Change happens not because of one moment, but because of many moments adding up. As attention drifts through this idea, the sense of urgency continues to fade. There is no single instant that must be captured. Everything unfolds through repetition. A soft sensory cue can appear now. The dim orange of a setting sun fading into grey, the texture of cool air against skin, the quiet tick of an insect somewhere nearby, slow and intermittent. Aging too follows this layered sense of time. In living systems, aging is not simply wearing out. It is adaptation across years. Cells accumulate small changes, tissues adjust, systems compensate, some processes slow, others become more efficient. Memory is written into structure. Trees offer a peaceful illustration of this truth. Each year, growth rings form beneath the bark, recording conditions of light, water, and temperature. These rings do not represent loss, they represent survival. They show how the tree responded, how it adjusted, how it continued. In animals, aging reflects a similar story. Muscles learn efficiency. Nervous systems refine pathways. Experience becomes embodied knowledge. Even at the cellular level, mechanisms exist to repair damage, to replace worn components, to maintain function as long as possible. Time in biology is not an enemy, it is a collaborator. Another reassurance can drift through, barely noticeable. Nothing needs to be hurried. Memory in living systems is often physical rather than narrative. Immune cells remember past encounters, responding more gently and effectively the next time. Muscles remember patterns of movement. Neural pathways strengthen through use, not force. These memories do not replay themselves like stories. They guide response quietly, shaping future behavior without requiring conscious recall. As night deepens, memory shifts into integration. The brain reviews patterns from the day, not to judge them, but to file them away. Emotional intensity lowers. Experiences are sorted and softened. What matters remains, what does not fades. This process happens best in stillness, in darkness, in rest. A soft reassurance can settle here, like a deepening calm. You're allowed to let the day become memory. Across ecosystems, time reveals itself through cycles that return again and again. Fires clear forests, then forests regrow. Rivers shift course slowly, reshaping floodplains. Species rise and fall, replaced by others better suited to changing conditions. None of this happens quickly. Stability emerges from patience. Patience here is not waiting with tension. It is waiting without resistance. As the mind rests on this idea, it may notice how thoughts naturally slow when they are not pushed forward. Gaps appear between them. Those gaps are not empty, they are restful. Another gentle reassurance passes, warm and quiet. Everything arrives in its own time. Biological clocks continue even in darkness. Deep within cells, molecular feedback loops keep time, oscillating gently. These loops persist without light, though light helps reset them. They ensure that rhythms remain stable even when external cues are temporarily absent. This persistence is comforting. It means that balance does not depend on constant input. Systems carry their own sense of timing, their own memory of when to act and when to pause. Time, then, is carried within life, not imposed from outside. A subtle sensory detail can drift in now. The sound of a distant clock muffled by walls, the way its rhythm fades into the background, the feeling of night stretching wide, unmeasured. As this chapter continues to descend, acceptance becomes the dominant tone. Time does not need to be resisted or managed. It does not need to be filled. It can simply be inhabited. Aging, change, cycles of rest and activity, all are expressions of the same underlying principle. Life adapts through continuity. It remains itself by changing, slowly. The world outside mirrors this truth. Mountains rise and erode. Coastlines shift. Stars move across the sky with predictable patience. Everything that lasts does so by accepting time rather than fighting it. Another reassurance can settle gently, like a quiet anchor. You're part of this rhythm. As the chapter nears its quiet resting place, the image of time softens further, less like a line, more like a tide, coming in, going out, returning again. Living things do not rush this tide, they align with it. They grow when conditions allow. They rest when energy wanes. They trust a return. The night now feels deeper. Sounds are fewer. Light is low and even. The sense of pressure eases further. From time's quiet markings, from these rhythms written into cells and seasons, we drift toward connection itself, toward the ways life links and supports itself in the dark. Time deepens what it touches. No living thing exists alone, even when it appears solitary. Life on Earth is woven from relationships so gentle and constant that they often fade into the background unnoticed. Beneath every step, within every breath, and across every landscape, living systems lean on one another, shaping balance through connection rather than command. A simple scientific truth can rest here, quiet and steady. Ecosystems with greater diversity are more stable. When many different organisms share space and function, the whole system recovers more gently from change. This stability does not come from control, it comes from redundancy, cooperation, and shared rhythm. If you imagine a forest floor, you might picture fallen leaves layered over dark soil. At first glance it looks still, but beneath that surface countless interactions are unfolding. Microbes break down organic matter, releasing nutrients back into the earth. Fungi extend thin networks outward, connecting roots that may never touch directly. Insects move slowly through gaps, aerating soil, redistributing material. This is relationship in its quietest form, not exchange that demands attention, but presence that supports function. A soft sensory detail can appear here: the scent of damp earth, the coolness of shade, the faint rustle of something small moving just out of sight. These details do not ask to be followed, they simply exist, like the relationships they represent. Plants depend on soil communities to access minerals. Soil communities depend on plant roots for sugars. Animals depend on plants for food and shelter. Plants depend on animals for pollination and seed dispersal. The links are layered, overlapping, and resilient because no single connection carries the entire burden. Another gentle reassurance can drift through, low and calm. You're not required to carry everything alone. In coral reefs, this principle becomes especially visible. Tiny coral animals build vast structures over time, each one adding a thin layer of calcium carbonate. Inside their tissues live algae that provide energy through photosynthesis. The algae gain protection and access to light. The coral gains nourishment. Together they create habitats for thousands of other species. The reef does not rush its construction. It grows millimetre by millimetre, year after year, forming complexity through patience. When conditions are stable, the system flourishes. When stressed, its vulnerability reminds us how delicate balance can be. Balance here is not static, it is dynamic, maintained through continuous adjustment. Species shift roles, populations fluctuate, energy flows change direction, yet the overall structure persists when relationships remain intact. Across grasslands, grazing animals shape plant growth, preventing dominance by a single species. Their movement spreads seeds and nutrients. Predators influence grazing patterns, indirectly shaping vegetation. Even absence becomes a form of influence. In oceans, currents distribute heat and nutrients, linking distant regions. Plankton feeds small fish. Small fish feed larger ones. Waste becomes resource. Nothing is truly discarded. It is only transformed. A quiet reassurance can arrive here, like a soft nod. Everything has a place. Life as a relationship extends into the smallest scales as well. Inside the human body, trillions of microorganisms live alongside cells, aid in digestion, supporting immune function, shaping metabolism. These microbes are not invaders. They are partners, long established, deeply integrated. Without them, the system struggles. With them, balance is easier to maintain. The idea that individuality includes community can feel comforting. Even bodies that feel separate are ecosystems, shaped by countless internal relationships working together. As the night deepens, the tone continues to soften. Sentences slow, pauses widen. Imagine a wide landscape under starlight. No single point draws focus. The scene feels whole rather than detailed. Hills and valleys blend. The air is still. The sense of connection is ambient, like warmth rather than light. Another reassurance can settle here, gentle and brief. You're supported in ways you don't have to see. In wetlands, plants and microbes filter water, removing excess nutrients, preventing downstream damage. These systems act as buffers, absorbing change before it becomes harmful. Their value lies in moderation, in their ability to soften extremes. In forests, canopy layers regulate temperature and humidity, creating microclimates that protect understory plants and animals. Fallen logs become nurseries for new growth. Death feeds life without ceremony. These relationships are not sentimental, they are practical. They work because they evolve together, shaping and reshaping each other over long spans of time. Emotionally, this chapter carries a sense of belonging without demand, participation without pressure. Life does not require perfection from its components. It requires presence. It requires responsiveness. It requires the willingness to exist alongside others. A soft sensory cue can appear now, the feeling of cool water around ankles, the warmth of sun filtered through leaves, the distant sound of wind moving across open ground. Belonging in this sense is not about fitting into a narrow role. It is about being part of a wider pattern, one that has room for variation, for rest, for change. Another gentle reassurance drifts through, like a slow breath. You are already part of this. As the mind rests here, the idea of separation begins to soften. Boundaries remain, but they feel permeable. Exchange feels natural. Isolation loses its sharpness. Life supports life not through constant action, but through quiet alignment. Systems lean into one another, sharing load, redistributing stress, creating resilience through connection. This is why ecosystems recover best when left space to respond. Intervention that respects relationship tends to heal more effectively than force. Time, again, plays its role, allowing adjustments to accumulate gradually. As this chapter approaches its quiet centre, gratitude arises naturally, without effort. Gratitude not directed at a single thing, but at the web itself, at the fact that life has found ways to persist through cooperation rather than dominance. Another reassurance settles, warm and low. Nothing here is accidental. The night feels closer now, sounds thin further. Movement becomes rare. The sense of connection remains, but it grows less defined, more like a background presence. Relationships do not disappear in stillness. They simply require less attention. Like roots in soil, they continue their work unseen. As the final images drift by, the planet feels less like a collection of separate parts and more like a single, breathing system. Diverse, interconnected, patient. And as connections soften into harmony, the night draws closer, carrying everything toward rest. Connection is nature's calmest strength. Night reveals a different version of life, one that moves with less urgency and speaks in quieter tones. As sunlight withdraws, the planet does not fall silent all at once. Instead, it eases into darkness. Like a long exhale shared across continents and oceans, temperatures lower, colours dim, activity thins out, leaving more space between moments. A gentle scientific fact can settle here, calm and grounding. Many species conserve energy at night by reducing activity to essential functions. Metabolism slows, movement becomes economical, the body shifts from outward engagement to inward care. This is not retreat, it is protection. If you imagine Earth from above now, the night side glows softly, traced by faint patterns of light. Cities shine like constellations reflected on land. Between them, wide regions rest in darkness, forests and fields barely visible, oceans absorbing the sky. The boundary between day and night curves gently, always moving, never sharp. Down on the surface, the change is felt in small ways. The air cools against skin. Sounds lose their sharp edges. A faint hum of insects replaces the busier chorus of day. Silver blue light settles over the ground, smoothing details, inviting stillness. A soft reassurance can arrive here, like a low whisper carried on the breeze. You can slow now. Nocturnal rhythms are not simply the absence of daytime ones. They are their own patterns tuned to darkness. Owls take flight with silent wings. Bats navigate with echoes too soft to hear. Moths drift toward pale light. Each movement is deliberate, efficient, shaped by a world with fewer visual cues. For many animals, night offers safety. Predators that rely on sight become less effective. Heat dissipates, reducing strain on bodies adapted to cooler conditions. Water loss slows. Energy can be conserved. Even animals that remain active move differently after sunset. Their steps are measured, their pauses longer. Attention narrows to what matters most. The rest of the world fades into background. Plants too respond to night. Growth pauses. Leaves change orientation. Internal chemistry shifts toward maintenance. Sugars produced during the day are redistributed, fueling repair and slow development. The visible world seems still, but internal processes continue at a gentler pace. A faint sensory detail can drift in now, the coolness of grass beneath bare feet, the sound of a single cricket repeating its call, the smell of night air, slightly damp, slightly sweet. Darkness itself plays a role in this transformation. Without light, the visual system relaxes. The brain reduces its demand for constant interpretation. Attention turns inward. Thought slows, not because it is forced to, but because there is less stimulation to pull it outward. Another gentle reassurance settles here, barely more than a breath. It's all right to let the edges soften. Inside bodies, night triggers a cascade of changes. Hormones associated with alertness decrease. Those linked to rest and repair increase. Body temperature drops slightly. Blood pressure eases. These changes are small, but together they create a state that favours recovery. The nervous system shifts balance, emphasising calm over readiness. Muscles release tension they have held unconsciously. The heart finds a slower rhythm. Breathing becomes quieter, deeper, less demanding. This shift is ancient. Long before artificial light, night was the dominant environment for rest. Bodies evolved to trust darkness as a signal, a reliable cue that it was safe to pause. That trust remains even now. Across landscapes, night reshapes behaviour. Herds gather more closely. Burrowing animals emerge briefly, then retreat. aquatic life rises and sinks in daily vertical migrations, following light and nutrient gradients. These movements are synchronized, guided by the steady turning of the planet. Synchronization is one of night's quiet gifts. When many organisms respond to the same cue, their actions align, reducing conflict and conserving energy. The system becomes smoother, more predictable. A soft reassurance can appear here, like a gentle anchor. You are moving with this rhythm. The night side of Earth is also a time of cooling. Heat absorbed during the day radiates back into space. Surfaces release warmth slowly, preventing sudden temperature drops. This gradual cooling protects tissues, soil, and water from shock. Cooling invites stillness. Molecules move less vigorously. Reactions slow. The world settles into a lower energy state. As the night deepens further, the sense of holding becomes more pronounced. Darkness does not press in. It surrounds like a wide, soft blanket. It hides sharp details. It reduces demands. A sensory image can float by now. Moonlight reflecting faintly on water. The outline of trees against a dim sky. The texture of cool air resting on the face. Another reassurance drifts through, quiet and steady. You're not required to be alert. For humans, night has long been associated with reflection and rest. Stories were once told by firelight, voices low, movement slow. The absence of daylight invited inward attention, memory, and imagination. Even now, that association lingers in the nervous system. The brain responds to darkness by shifting into modes that favor integration rather than analysis. Experiences are filed away, emotions soften, creative connections form without effort. Sleep itself is not a single state, but a progression. Light sleep, deeper sleep, dreaming. Each stage serves a purpose, restoring balance, clearing waste, reinforcing memory. The process unfolds best when night is allowed to be night. Another gentle reassurance can settle here, like a final invitation. There is nothing you need to stay awake for. Across the planet, the night side continues its quiet work. Oceans release heat. Forests breathe differently. Atmospheres stabilize. Life holds itself gently, conserving energy for the return of light. Night is not an ending, it is a holding space, a pause between cycles. A time when the world takes care of itself with less effort. As this chapter moves toward its resting point, the tone lowers further. Words become fewer, images simpler. The silver-blue light fades, the hum of insects softens. Movement becomes rare enough to feel precious. And now, with the journey nearly complete, everything begins to rest together under the same dark sky. Darkness is a form of care. You've travelled through silence and science tonight, moving gently through cells and forests, water and air, time and connection. Nothing asked you to hurry along the way. The journey unfolded at its own pace, as life always does when it is allowed to be itself. Now the night feels fuller, deeper, as if it has settled around you with quiet intention. If you're still here, listening, your body has already begun to respond. Muscles have softened in small, unnoticed ways. Breathing has found a slower rhythm. Thoughts no longer press forward with the same insistence. Even wakefulness, if it remains, has changed its texture. It has grown gentler. This is not something you needed to make happen. It arrived on its own. Life on Earth, when viewed slowly, reveals a simple truth. Nothing living is meant to stay alert forever. Nothing is meant to remain active without pause. Rest is not an interruption in the story of life. It is one of its most reliable chapters, returning again and again, patient and forgiving. Across the planet right now, countless systems are doing exactly what your body is doing. Forests have lowered their pace. Leaves release moisture into cool air. Roots continue their quiet work underground, but without urgency. Oceans have shifted into their nighttime patterns, surface waters cooling slightly, currents adjusting their flow. Even the atmosphere has changed its tone, settling closer to the ground, holding warmth gently. You are part of this wider settling, whether you think about it or not. Inside your body, the same principles you've heard about are quietly at work. Cells conserve energy. Repair processes take priority. Chemical messengers signal that it is safe to let go of sharp focus. The nervous system shifts balance, favouring calm over readiness. If awareness drifts to your breath now, you may notice how little effort it takes. Air moves in, air moves out. There is no need to guide it. It knows the path. A soft reassurance can settle here, like a warm weight. You are being carried by patterns much older than you. Throughout this story, life has shown itself not as a series of dramatic events, but as a collection of steady processes, balance over speed, cooperation over force, rest as preparation. These principles are not abstract ideas, they are physical realities written into the way living systems endure. Even now, as you lie here, those realities are shaping the moment. Blood moves more slowly through relaxed vessels. Temperature shifts subtly. The brain changes how it processes information, favouring integration over analysis. Sensory input fades into the background. This fading is not loss, it is refinement. If thoughts still wander, they can wander without purpose. They don't need to arrive anywhere. They can loop, dissolve, or drift away entirely. There is no requirement to follow them. Another reassurance can arrive, quiet and unassuming. Nothing is being asked of you now. Life resting together is not an image limited to nature documentaries or distant landscapes. It includes this room, this moment, this body. It includes the steady gravity holding you in place. It includes the quiet sounds that remain, softened by night. Perhaps there is a faint hum from far away. Perhaps there is silence. Both are acceptable. Both belong. The world does not go empty at night. It becomes subtle. Processes continue beneath the surface of awareness just as they always have. Cells repair, memories integrate, energy is redistributed, balance is restored, not all at once, but gradually. Gradually is the key. The same gradual approach that shaped oceans and forests shapes rest itself. Sleep does not need to arrive suddenly to be effective. Even drifting, even hovering at the edge, allows the body to lower its guard. The descent matters more than the destination. If wakefulness lingers, it can do so without tension. There is no deadline. The night is wide. A gentle reassurance can rest here, like a final permission. You can let the story hold you. Throughout Earth's history, night has been a teacher. It taught early life when to pause. It taught animals when to conserve energy. It taught plants how to time their growth. It taught ecosystems how to reset. Those lessons remain embedded in living systems, quietly guiding behaviour without instruction. You do not need to remember them consciously. Your body already does. As minutes pass, the boundary between listening and resting can soften. Words may begin to blur together. Images may lose clarity. Attention may flicker and fade. All of this is part of the process. There's no correct way for this moment to unfold. Another reassurance drifts through, slow and low. You're exactly where you need to be. Gratitude naturally arises here, not as an emotion you must feel strongly, but as a quiet acknowledgement. Gratitude for the space you've given yourself. Gratitude for the systems that continue their work without demanding attention. Gratitude for the simple fact of being part of a living planet that knows how to rest. Thank you for sharing this quiet space. Thank you for allowing the pace to slow. The story does not need to continue now. It can fade like light dimming beyond the horizon. Everything essential remains, even as attention slips away. If you're still here, your body already knows what peace feels like. Life, in all its forms, is resting together now. Forests, oceans, cells, you. The same rhythm moves through all of it, steady and kind. Rest is life remembering itself. Good night.